He, it sounds a bit better, but let me hear from the rest of the house. Um, can
Okay.
we hear Adebayo Adebisi? Can we hear him? Please, I just need people to tell us if they can hear him apart from myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So,
So you will,
good evening, everyone.
good evening.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about writing grant proposal, especially the winning one. So winning a grant proposal, there's no specification regarding the grant that we are talking about, but then I'll give a general and broad overview of how to write a winning grant proposal. So, to start with, how do you even have the information on the kind of grants to actually apply to and to know how to have access to such grants? What's very important as a young researcher is that you have to know that we have, let me use the word, limited opportunities when it comes to grants because we have limits to what we can do. Because some grants we see specification regarding you having a laboratory, you being a professor or a PhD holder. But then as a young researcher, you still have access to some grants that you can apply to, especially when it comes to you building your capacity as an early career researcher. So how do you have access? How do you have the information on kind of grants that you can apply to? The first thing is that we have a lot of organizations that actually do this. So, as a young researcher, someone that actually wants to apply to grants, you need to know that you need to subscribe to some newsletter, you need to follow the social media handle so that you can have updates. For instance, let's say I'm interested in AMR, that's my favorite assistance, and I'm looking for grants in that area. What I have to do is to subscribe to newsletters, to subscribe to social media, to follow social media handles of organizations that actually offers these grants. So that's where you have an update regarding type of grant that you want to apply to. So another thing is that information. You can just add the information that okay, this person wants this particular grant. It's not really it's not necessary that you apply to that grant that same year because most people say once they have that information, this grant, just rush to apply. The thing is that you have to calm down, do your research about the grant that you want to apply to. Okay, I heard about this grant, this person wants this grant, it's put it in your LinkedIn. Just document it, then do your research about the grant, and so that you can make effort to apply. Because most people want to hear the grant, okay, I just want to apply without having that information regarding what the grant is all about. So having access to grants, the first thing is information. Because if you don't have the information, you won't even know that you are eligible to apply for some grant program or able to have access to some funding to make impact with your work. So applying for a grant as early career researchers is challenging, but I was talking about things that you can actually do to actually increase your chance of winning this grant. After you're learning that this grant is this organization actually release grants and they invite early career researcher to apply. You have to make sure that you add full information regarding what the grant is all about. Because most people want to see the grant, they don't even know whether they are eligible to apply. And most times if they are not eligible for some programs or some grants, uh, for some grants, if you apply, you have an outside rejection. And for some grants, you have to send letter of intent. Okay, you want to apply to this grant, send us letter of what you actually want to do. So once you send that to them, for instance, when you send letter of intent to them, one of the things that most grant organizations do is to actually assess the impact or the potential impact that your work is actually going to make in a particular field. So as an early career researcher, you have to make sure that you are ready to apply. And what should be at the back of your mind is that you want to apply for this particular grant to make impact and also to actually advance science. Because applying for grants, as good as see it and maybe it comes with a lot of work and responsibility on the part of the awardee. So as a career researcher, you have to make up your mind, you have to put at the back of your mind that when applying for a particular grant, you should focus on the impact that your work is going to make. Because actually it will reflect. Because when you are writing most grant proposal, I'm talking about research funding now, there's a part where you have to explain the possible impact, what your work, what impact is going to make in the scientific community, what impact is going to make to advance science, what impact is going to make to improve lives of others, what impact is going to make to yourself. Because as a career researcher, there are some skills, there are some funding opportunities that they actually put it there that some like let's say about 30% of the funding should be for your personal development. So as a young researcher that wants to apply for funding, you have to make sure that you already have the full information about whether you are eligible to apply and the full scope of what you want to do. So how do you even know the kind of areas of topics that funders actually want to what they want to fund? What you have to do is to make that research, read about that funding, that organization. What do they see themselves doing in 2 years? What is their mission? What is their vision? Because most times, like I said earlier, once you have information and you want to apply to a particular grant, for you to increase your chance of winning, you have to tailor your proposal to advance the scope of what that organization is all about. For instance, an organization, what they want to do is to build capacity of young people in a particular area. So once you are applying for a grant to that organization, you must be able to argue out why you are applying and also how your proposal or the fund your research proposal or any proposal you are applying to, you have to be able to argue out why it's going to actually push forward the whole agenda. Because the win-win situation, and as a young researcher, you have a lot of competition, or at times most times it's possible for you to win grants. So around doing your research about the grant, it's also important that when you are writing grant proposal, you write with clarity. Clarity is very important. This is not the time for you to share facts that you understand big grammar. It's to focus and be able to tailor what you are saying to what anybody, even someone that is not in your field, can easily understand what you are doing for proposal. Because at times there's a funding opportunity that people that will review your work might not be an expert in that area, might not be an expert on that topic that you are submitting to them. There's a possibility. So you have to make sure that you write with clarity and you're able to argue out your point in such a way that anyone that's reading your proposal will understand what you are talking about. So writing with clarity is very important. Another thing that is very important when you are writing grant proposal is review. You have to make sure that you review your proposals like 3 times. I send it to someone, maybe a mentor, maybe a friend, to help you read through it and give comments. So it's not a rush work, and it's very important that you make sure that your work is reviewed by another person. So, as I said earlier, talking for grants, so I have to emphasize on this again that, okay, use foreign social media handles of organization, you subscribe to their newsletter, keep you updated on possible opportunities that is available for young researchers. And like I said earlier, it's very important that you're able to lay emphasis on the possible impact that your project is going to make. So generally, I'm just talking about general overview of when you're writing a grant proposal. But I will also mention some things regarding you securing a project grant. Because we have different type of grants. It can be a project grant, it can be a travel grant, it can be a research grant. So when you are writing a project grant, maybe because at times there are some things that you have to do that will come in form of project. Maybe there's a particular problem that has been identified in a community, and there is funding for that for you to make impact, or for you to let us understand how big the problem is. So at times you might want to fund that kind of work using the project, some of the project grants. So when you are applying for a project grant, what is very important again when applying for project grant is that you have to be able to tell us or tell the reviewers why you're actually applying in the first place. Because you must be able to tailor your interest towards the reason why you're applying for that particular grant. So when applying for grants, one thing that is very important is writing with clarity, and you understand the reason why you're applying for that grant. Because when you apply for grants, you must make sure that you are able to, you have the required skills and knowledge for you to execute the what you call that the proposal. So as a young researcher, it's not about money, it's about the impact that you want to make. And if you really go after that impact that you want to drive with your work, of course, it will show your proposal, how you are able to defend the points and what you actually want to do with the funding. So, general outline when you apply for it, for like most research and grant proposal, some of them will come with a section that we have to talk about the impact, that we talk about the introduction, the project activity itself, what are the learnings of your project. So, for research funding, I might see that they just put a part that will make you understand how you want to use the project funding to develop yourself. So as a young researcher, doing this and making prepare your proposal takes a lot of time in terms of you trying to do your research regarding the grant, and also in terms of you having time to prepare the proposal. So research funding is everywhere, and as a young researcher, you can explore this opportunity to have access to the funding to improve your knowledge and also to advance science. So as a young person, you can do it. So another thing I want to talk about is another thing that can actually increase the chance of securing a grant, of getting a grant, then research grant, is publication. So as a young researcher, publishing is very important. At least there's some fundings I've applied to. One of the things that they have to is to submit maybe like 10 publications, or some will have to submit 20 publications, or 5 publications, or a presentation that you made. So as a young researcher, another thing that you have to, before you start looking for grants, make sure that you have enough publications, you build your capacity in research. Because I think what comes first is building capacity in research, understanding what research is all about, mainly about research. Are you even understanding how to communicate science through publication? Because that will actually increase your class, and they want to see your publication. This person, have you ever published before? How are you going to disseminate your findings? Because for me, most times when I'm writing a proposal, when I write for grants, one of the things that I do is that I make sure that I'm able to communicate how I will disseminate my findings. And most of the time, I ideas that I'm going to publish there. So that means that for you even to think of you applying for a grant, the first thing is that you must make a conscious effort to build capacity in research, understand the process of research, understand research processes, and how to actually put this together. Because as a young researcher, why you're applying for grants when you are still not so skillful enough to write a publication, for the publication, because most grant projects, but not put it there that you publish your work. But then most people that actually put in their proposal that okay, when we are done with the project, whether project grant or whether research grant, they are still going to communicate your findings through publications to the research community. So another thing is that build a very good online presence. Of course, be a good person and also have a good online presence. Because at times, or most times, they will check you out. Now, okay, the center we are even giving this grant, who is this person? So you have to make sure that you have a very good online presence and make it clear the kind of person you are and what to stand for. Not that okay, you apply for a grant, even though what they have seen on social media handle is something that you are not proud of. So you have to make sure that you have a good online presence and also make sure that when you apply for a grant, you are ready to actually do the project and to actually do the work that comes with you applying for the grant. So nowadays, most times when you're writing grants nowadays doesn't have to be in form of you writing a proposal, form of document, like put it in document form. Most times it's just an online form. It can be short, online form. Tell us in 20 words, tell us in 30, tell us in 500 characters, the background of the problem, the method that you want to use in your study, the possible impact. It's just maybe 500 words at times. But some we ask you to submit something like maybe an abstract before you submit the full proposal. So any kind of study you are applying for, you have to make sure that you are ready to execute the project. You have the required knowledge and skills to, even if you don't have the required knowledge and skills to do the project yourself, you can team up, you can collaborate. So collaboration is also another way you can use to support, in a way, to support your application. Such a way that, okay, you want to apply for a grant, you can team up with someone that you know that this person has expertise in this field, and this person is a researcher, or that person is also knowledgeable. So you can, through that process, you can collaborate, discuss your idea, then put forward the proposal. So as a young person, remove that part that you can't win a grant. You can win a grant. You can win the grant, but then what is important is you having the information and you being intentional about you winning them. So being intentional, of course, when you're applying for a grant for funding, one of the things important is that you are able to resonate what you want to work on with yourself. That's why you have to be able to tell your story to win some grants. So I'm talking into different dimensions because there are different grants and different ways or different strategies of applying to them. So it's very important as a young researcher that you read about the grants. So you can look up the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene small grant, £5,000. You can win it for any career researchers. Because one of the reasons why the grant is set up is that for most young people, any career researchers don't really have access to funding. So the funding is provided for young researchers to test their knowledge of research and also to test maybe their curiosity, hypothesis that they have in mind. So you can win it. It's a yearly program. For this year, for next year, there's going to be another funding again. We are trying to Tropical Medicine and Hygiene small grant. If they're interested in tobacco research, harm reduction research, there are also funding that are actually available to you as a young researcher to apply to. We also have some funding by some organization, but then what is important is information and searching actively. So you can search on Google, you can follow pages of international organizations for you to have the information. Because if they have the information, you'll be able to apply. So, and also build capacity in research. And the young person build capacity in research before you start thinking of applying for grants. And if you know that, okay, you have an important idea that you really want to test, you want to test that hypothesis, then team up with someone that is an expert that has knowledge in that field and apply for the grant. So we have different type of grants. So this just trying to give an overview of what you can do to actually secure funding. Remember, build a very good online presence, because I've applied some grant programs. One of the things that they will ask you to submit is submit maybe your Facebook the URL, your Facebook URL, or your Twitter URL. Some will not even ask you anything. They will just Google the name to see, okay, what is this person up to? Can we support this person? What this person has been doing? So build a very good online presence. Look for the information. Be intentional about winning the grant. Review. There's no need to rush to apply for a grant. Make sure you do your research and send it to people in the particular area to help you review application. Collaborate. If there's a need to collaborate with someone that is an expert or someone that you think is knowledgeable than you in that area. And also remember to write with clarity, because I will not be giving an overview of how grant is supposed to be like structure. Structure is not important as I do. Many organizations come up with different structures. So, but then if you look at what they are all looking for, it's always the same. What is the problem? What do you want to do? Which methodology do you want to use? What impact? What are the possible impacts your project is going to make? How do you want to communicate your findings? So that's just the general thing that you see in most grant applications. So you as an individual that will prepare your application, be able to resonate your the problem that you are trying to solve to make it fundable. Because one of the things that you have to look out for again is that when you are applying for a grant, let's say research funding, you have to make sure that you read background information, or you check the website to see past leaders. That's another thing that you have to do. Read about the past leaders. What are the kind of projects that they fund? Because it's only when you read about the past winners of a particular project that you have an insight of what kind of project this organization is likely to fund. So most organizations to put it on their website. So read about it, and also you formulate your own idea with that. You might not even have a particular idea that you always want to work on, but you know, okay, you are interested in applying for this particular grant, or you have an area of interest. Let's say your area of interest is EMR. Then when you read, you know the kind of funding that they give. So at times when you apply for some grant project, you know, okay, this project really the fund only clinical research project. So you know that, okay, when you know where you have access to now, you can apply for it. So you have this type of the kind of thing, the kind of project that this organization actually funds. So another type of grant is there's no specification we're going to speak about, but then I also talk about you getting the travel grant. It's almost similar. Getting a travel grant for conferences, the surest way for you to get that, I know there's a pandemic now, but then just know this, that submitting a grant, submitting an abstract for conferences increases your chance of securing a travel grant to present your findings. So, you know that if you want to write an abstract for a grant, one of the things that is important is that you carry out a project that has been done, or a research has been done, or if you have time, you can start that project for the sole purpose of you submitting to that conference. So, for instance, you securing a travel grant also by information, and also you having area of interest. For instance, I'm interested in harm reduction. There are some conferences on harm reduction yearly. And all of these conferences actually give grants for you to come and present, for you to present your findings or anything you are working on. So now you can apply to this kind of funding opportunities. So for me, when I know that I don't have the capacity to attend that conference, I don't see any point of you applying for that kind of conference. There's no need to apply to a conference that you can't attend, unless there's a way you know that you want to fund your traveling, or is it factual, as we have a lot of conferences now. So this is an opportunity for you to present in conferences. So that's an abstract that you can win registration fee, because most government now gives you grants or scholarship for registration, so you can attend and present your findings. So applying for grants takes effort on the own side, and also you making that your personal research on that funded opportunity, and also you having that skills and knowledge to apply and to implement that project. Because I used to tell a lot of people, when you apply for funding, I don't think you just apply because just want to apply and all. You should apply because you have something that you want to do. So applying for funding should come with you having that capacity, and having that interest in that area where you apply for funding. So as a young researcher, you can win grants. You have access to funding, though it is limited, but they are still available. So winning the grant should be something that you should try as a young researcher, even though you are not capable of applying. Continue to build capacity, continue to grow, continue to improve your knowledge in that particular area that you have an area of interest. For instance, you can have many areas of interest, but the thing that what is important is that you have to improve your knowledge in that area. And one of the things that you have to do when you're applying for grants is that you have to make sure that your research, your project title is something that is relevant and in a way is novel. So when applying for grants, this is very important. And how do you know that something is novel? How do you know that this idea that you're bringing in is interesting? Is when you yourself you are current in that field. For instance, the area of interest is cardiovascular disease. You are focusing on cardiovascular disease as your area of interest. You should be on top of your you have current information regarding what's happening in that field. What's the up-to-date information? So building capacity should be something that is continuous. And building capacity, you learning, reading about a particular field actually makes you become more curious, because you have a lot of ideas coming to your head. But most people ask me, how am I able to come up with interesting topic, or how am I able to conceptualize topic? One of the things is that you have to do is that you have to make sure that you are correct, or you have information about what's actually happening in that area, your area of interest. You are interested in COVID, like your area of interest is going towards COVID, and you still don't know what's happening regarding period that we have of COVID. So it should not be, because it's when you are curious. Actually, there's no way you are curious about a particular thing that you have an interesting ideas coming to your head. So the more ideas you have, the more competitive you can make your grant proposal be. So as a young researcher, keep learning, keep building capacity, keep collaborating, keep learning more about research. And as you do all this, you tend to build yourself, and you tend to understand possible areas that you can explore to apply for research funding. So at times, you might say that you understand a particular problem in your community. Most times, it's not necessary that you do research, you win a research grant. You can win a project grant. You understand the problem in your community. Maybe there's an awareness gap on a particular problem. Certain rural community or remote areas in your country or your region, your state. Instead of you are doing to apply for research grant for those kind of things, you can actually apply for project grant to make an actual impact. To make an actual impact on what you are passionate about. So, as a young researcher, winning the grant is possible, and of course, you can do it. So, I'm just trying to make sure that I think everything clear, so you that we can also ask some questions on anything that is not clear. So I think now you can ask your question if anything is not clear, so I can shed more light on that. through your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for enlightening us about this. I feel like despite the sound and appearances, a lot a lot. So at this point, I'm going to open the floor for any questions that we have for Adebisi. Any questions at all? Please, if you have any question, please you can either drop it in the chat box. If where you are, it's going to be hard for you to talk, or just that I can know that I can hear your question. I just ask it directly. So does anyone have a question?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, okay, my name is Ufonogo. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Adebisi, for the presentation. Okay, my question is okay, like now, okay, in health, what are the areas of research with very good funding?
Okay. What areas of research has like currently has good funding? Well, currently I will say COVID, but then there's really no limit. It depends on the funding cost. So now we have a lot of funding for COVID-19, for antimicrobial resistance, funding for tobacco smoking, like how to reduce the prevalence and to understand the challenges facing um, the eradication or cease tobacco smoking in sub-Saharan African countries, and also interesting areas uh, um, like snake bite. Snake bite are interested to explore snake bite, the dangers, the challenges, the burdens we have in Africa. The Royal Society of Tropical Medicine is ready to fund your work because now RSMH is focusing on that is going interest in snake bite to understand the prevalence, the incidence, and how big the problem is in Africa, and also neglected tropical disease. Also have a lot of funding opportunities. For that, of course, you understand that it's the COVID. So we have a lot of funding opportunities for COVID. But then there are still some minor fundings in different areas. But then identifying the grants and identifying the funding organization is what is really important. So I hope that is clear.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
How
Are you
about cancer?
okay? Please go on.
How about cancer research? How good? How about
Of
their
course.
funding?
So I
About
didn't
here in
mention that.
Nigeria and I mean in Africa and this thing. Okay, you didn't mention it, but
Yes, cancer is very well funded. The interesting area is well funded. Cancer also receives a lot of granting calls and most times generally clinical research for cancer. So if you're doing clinical research, you have new access to laboratory, you can get that collaboration. Cancer research is very, very important. And also is receiving a lot of funding calls. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. And any other questions? Okay, while I guess everybody's trying to get their questions together, I have a question for you. You talked about going to places where they have funding or they are providing grant. And you know, normally, let's do that. Let's look at getting a job, for instance. There are sites like Job and Indeed. There are people to yeah, that give like the best tips on how to get a job, or probably like sites or have they. So, like in this context of getting funding now, do you know of any blog or sites or even anybody on social media that you would recommend we follow? Probably provides all provides information about all this like all the opportunities when it comes to grants and funding?
What, like I said earlier, one thing that is for you to be able to see your funding to have the information. And regarding websites, well, I think, for instance, as a young researcher, try as much as possible to establish an area of interest and identify top organizations in that area. Let's say you are interested in HIV/AIDS. One of the top organizations when it comes to HIV/AIDS research funding is International AIDS Society. So I won't say I'm interested in HIV/AIDS and I don't know about this organization. So I think one of the things that you have to do is to map out the organizations in your area of interest. Then follow them on social media and also learn more about the kind of funding that they have. I think that's direct. Because most opportunity, all these opportunity there, or the opportunities, some of them don't feature most grants. Like very few grants that you find. But then the organization itself that releases the funding, you should be able to know them and follow them. When it comes to NCD, there's a particular section at WHO that generally funds neglected physical disease project. So I think it's that the person, young researcher, making that finding to identify top organizations in his area of interest. So I think that's the best way you can have access to updated information regarding funding costs. And also you can subscribe to these letters. So for instance, there's an organization that you can just subscribe to their newsletter so you can receive updates of the funding calls on straight to your email. So what is important is you having an area of interest, identify organizations in that field or area, then start looking forward to apply some of their grants. I think that's the best way. Rather than you following someone, because if you follow someone and probably not even post it, but if they have that organization says that okay, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in AMR, I'm interested in global health research, and you don't follow the rest of tropical medicine and hygiene, you don't follow American Society of tropical medicine and hygiene. So yes, so what is important is you identifying pick up that interest in a particular area, then subscribe to the newsletter, follow their social media, and then you can receive the direct information as they release it. Yeah, so that's the best way. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. That was really good. Do we have any other questions? Are there any other questions for Farm Yusuff? Like I said, for those that are probably in transit or something and you can't use the audio right now, you can just put your questions in the chat box. Okay, well, since we're still waiting for more questions, I still have another question for you. But it's based on a conversation we once had here on Science Cafe. We're talking about biotech in Nigeria, and somebody raised the problem of the fact that we don't have a lot of like research going on in new areas, innovation and all. So, like, the question about the trend right now. I'm now asking if perhaps your own, for example, if area field dealing with COVID or anything. Okay, let me use an example. If supposing my area of interest has to do with autoimmune diseases, something that happens in Nigeria, but doesn't mean that people talk about it. How would you advise like me probably, um, who probably get funding of places to navigate that road,
Hello,
that
your
path?
voice is breaking.
Okay,
I can't hear
now.
clearly. Yes, it's better now.
Okay, so I was saying that he asked about the trending parts, the places
Okay.
that get more funding. I'm now asking, supposing I wanted to go into a less popular field for research, how would you advise somebody like me to navigate that path, knowing fully well that I might not get a lot of organizations, to like check.
Okay. Yeah, I understand now. So, becoming you exploring new areas, I think when you are exploring that kind of area as a young researcher, you have to be able to communicate the possible impact of your work. Like I said earlier, nothing is when you're writing that suppose that that will be novel in a way and that will be able to solve the problem. So if that particular area of interest that is not um that is new in a way and you want to apply for funding, one of the things that you have to do as a grant writer is to make sure that you are able to emphasize on the potential impact of your study. Once you're able to do that, you are good to go. Because lots of funding opportunities that is not specific. They won't tell you they are funding cancer research. They won't tell you they are funding study on COVID. Some will say health research. Some will say global health research. Some will say possible public health research, but not limited to this and this. So what you have to do as a researcher and is applying to something new or something novel, you have to be able to communicate the impact, the potential impact of your work. So once you're able to do that, are able to communicate that to the funding body, of course, there's a possibility that you might be able to actually secure the grant. So being able to communicate the potential impact of your work and also like I said earlier, once you know you're applying for something that is new, you're able to write with clarity so that they will understand what you're talking about, and also your work will be able to receive funding. So being able to communicate the potential impact of your work is very important when you're writing that kind of grant in a given area. Yeah.
Thank you very
That's it.
much, Yusuf. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Um, Please, if you want to ask a question, you can just unmute. You can unmute yourself and just ask.
This question is just out of curiosity. I want to ask grants. Okay, fine. We need grants to run some researches, but do we need grant to run, like, if you have to grow as a researcher, do you need grant to actually grow as a researcher? And then if not, how do you navigate your way, through the research did I say research vortex in Nigeria, for example, where if you are not loyal to someone, or if you don't know someone that knows someone that knows someone, probably you might not actually get published or even get noticed by anyone in the country, even though your research has the capacity of making impact socially or economically. So without grants, how can you actually achieve those kind of impacts? So, but if it's necessary that you get grants, are there local grants, like locally available grants that you can get from local, maybe private sectors in Nigeria, even from government too? I don't know if those are actually available, depending on the area of the society or area of the economy one wants to actually work on. Let's say, for example, waste and management that will affect the economy. So I don't know if those are actually workable. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. So, well, winning a grant is not compulsory. Yes, that's just it. Winning a grant is not compulsory. If you know that you can fund your research, you can fund what you want to do, then you can start the work. So that's why funding or receiving funding from the work should not be, for instance, let's say for part, I'm talking of an independent researcher now, should not be what to actually what we want you to focus on actually. That's it. So then winning a grant, there's some study that if you really want to do them, we need funding because they are so broad in such a way that at times you need to there is something that you want to do, you want to do a nationwide study in Nigeria or a particular issue, you need funding to be able to do that kind of study. But then the thing is, you can still do some studies on your own. That's why I said one of the things that is very important for young researcher is making that you are well published. Because of only course we ask you, what are your publications? What publications do you have? So you won't say because you don't secure funding, then you are not doing research. No, that's not right. So what you have to do as a young researcher is that you keep publishing, keep writing papers in that area of interest, and once you are doing that, you can also learn and be capacity on what research is all about. So so it's not compulsory. If you know you can fund your study on your own, you have that capacity, then you can. So regarding local funding, yes, there are local funding in Nigeria. I mean, there's one from NHR, yes, there's some local funding and all, but I know there won't be many because even Nigeria itself relies on many Nigerian researchers relies on organizations from the global south to fund their research. So what's important is that you identify. Well, why you think it? You think I apply for something that is less than. So you can apply for funding and not just local funding. You can apply for international funding, for Nigeria. I know there are some funding, but I think for universities, not for most of them are not for independent researchers. But then for international, most of them funding you can receive grants for your own personal work as an independent researcher without any affiliation. But then you have to be able to demonstrate that you have you are skillful when it comes to research, and the only way you can do that is to be well published. So it's not compulsory that you have access to funding before you can do research. But then there's some research that are so expensive that you need support and you need funding. But then
Exactly.
visibility studies that you can do on your own, continue. Like do them. Can be a knowledge activity passenger studies, can be a knowledge of prevalence and incidents, or stuff that you can do with your own resources. I already see.
Okay,
Because
thank you.
you will still need
Thank you
them
so much.
for your application. Yeah. Welcome.
There is something I just remembered. You know, researches that actually make good impacts actually they require a lot of funds, and I realize actually personally that they require a long time and they require a lot of funds. For instance,
Yes.
the coronavirus vaccine, the research that actually gave birth to those vaccines, most of those vaccines have been on for years, and the scientist that
Yes.
was working on it was not being supported really, but she was just lucky that she could get some chances, and she was able to run those researches. Now,
Of course,
for you
that's why
to make
you can produce money in Africa because
okay,
there's no funding. That's why they tell you that there's no funding to fund that kind of research. Why haven't they produced any vaccine from Africa? Because that kind of study actually needs big money. Like not
exactly,
just
exactly,
a few thousand, yeah.
exactly.
So
So for
go
you
on.
to get for you to make a good impact, you actually need a lot of money in research. Actually, for you to actually work on let's say that we affect the DNA and all, you need a lot of funding. But for Africans
You're
now,
very right.
do you think we can actually get for example a malaria vaccine to be produced? Can we actually get that kind of funding for an African to actually champion that kind of research and come up with something good if possible? Is
Uh,
it possible? Do you think?
uh, yes. Some Nigerian scientists,
Yeah.
you know, that one up to like maybe $2 million
Hmm.
for research. So we have them. Of course, as a Nigerian, as an African, you can win such grants. But then you have to start from somewhere. We have to demonstrate that you are a thought leader in that particular area. I know someone that won that kind of grant for malaria research. Another person, University of Lagos for sickle cell. about $2 million. But then what they are not doing at that stage is something, maybe something more clinical, research, try to look for cure, try to look for. But then as a dog researcher, you can still win a few grants to contribute something to knowledge because science is so big, it's not that we have to build on something. You guys just tell us today that you have a cure for HIV. Then you say, okay, your own study stand alone. There's nothing that you can use the medical literature to support your own findings. It's not possible. It's not possible. Like, okay, you just, your own solution just come from heaven. There's no justification for what you find out. You can't use previous studies to back up the early findings. So at times you have to use some studies, just small studies can even provide big insights to make larger impact. That's why if you apply for smaller funding, with time you will need larger funding to consider that work because now you are seeing bigger things, you are seeing the problem more. So that's why you have to build track records, let's say the particular area, so I can be able to receive that kind of funding. And that kind of funding is usually given to a particular institution. I don't know if there's an organization that can give someone $2 million and if that is that person's bank account. I'm not sure that's possible. It's usually hosted by institutions. You have to have an institution, maybe an institution in a country, maybe in a community. So you have to have an organization. Most of the time, academic people in academia, the lecturers, and people that can receive that kind of grant. But as an independent researcher, it's also possible when you have an organization that do consultation. So winning very big, a huge amount of money, funding is really possible. And it's already going on. A lot of Africans are on that kind of grant to establish center of excellence and to do some studies. But then we still say that amount of money is not enough. That's what people say. And it's true, it's not enough. Because there's a lot of problems, a lot of infectious disease, non-infectious disease, and all many issues facing Africa. So, and as I say, we think about I think about 12% of the world's population, and the research output from Africa is just 1%. So research is even our research activity is very low. And one of the things that we are expecting to be the problem is funding. So there's a lot of the funding that we receive say that, and I understand it's possible because you have a lot of areas that you have to cover. So as a young researcher, you just try to grow in that particular area, and with time, then maybe you can win for grants. So that is yeah.
Thank you so much, Fam Yusuf, for taking your time to talk to us today. I'm pretty sure each of us, or every single person has learned one or two things. So, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you making
Welcome.
our time.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
You're welcome. Okay. We're gonna move to our next speaker now. We're gonna move to our next speaker now. That's also Abdulafeez Akinloye. Sorry if I did not pronounce your name perfectly well. And he's going to be talking to us about getting published. So since I've introduced him before, and because I want to like make sure that we don't spend too much time, please, Farm Abdulafeez, you can take over now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ruth. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
All
you.
right, thank you. So please just let me know as soon as you stop hearing me. So I will be sharing my slides now. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, can we all see it?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name
Good
is
evening.
Abdulafeez. I'm sure I'm not new here. So I will be taking us through this topic, scientific writing, with a view to getting published. So, as a way of introduction, writing in science is a technical way in which scientists communicate information among themselves. So it's a way of passing the outcomes of some of the research activities that scientists carry out in their various labs, institutions, and some other places. And this kind of communication can include proposing an idea to solve a particular problem, or to report the results of an experiment, or trying to express an opinion, or reporting a case, creating awareness, etc. So it's also a way of documentation and storage, and in a way strengthening an important scientific process, which is reproducibility. We all know how important reproducibility is in science, and the only way, the surest way of getting reproducibility of an activity is by putting it down. And the only way of doing that is writing. So, which this kind of communication can be effected through various platforms, conferences, where scientists meet to exchange ideas, opinions, and present the results of their activities using abstract, or it could be publication through journals or science journalism. So there are various types of scientific writing. I have on this slide a few of them. There are a number. This list is not exhaustive. So I just put this here because I believe they seem to be most important to young researchers, at least a way of trying to get us published. So I would be starting, I'll just explain, I'll just give one or two points regarding each of them. Um, yeah, grant proposals. Well, they are generally written to funding organization. I won't talk much about this because Yusuff just did a great justice to this. And I believe we all got what it means and everything regarding it. So short communication, it's just a short report extending previously reported data. So it's a way of trying to buttress some of the data that have been reported previously. And depending on journals, the word limit can vary between 500 and 2,000 and can have an abstract. So I have an example of that here. So this is a short communication on the use of a particular method of analysis, which has been previously reported before. So another one is letter to an editor. It's also a brief report of an observation or a way of communicating a proposed study that is about to kick off. So usually also between 300 and 1,500 words, depending on journals. And I have this as an example of a report of an observation. And then this as an example of a proposed study. So the next one is an expert's opinion on specific topics. So this is also known as perspective or viewpoint, depending on the journal. So it's like getting the expert opinion on specific topics in a specific area of interest, and usually do not contain interest. Also, the number of words and the requirement varies across journals. So this is an example of that. Another one here. Another type of scientific writing which I want to explain is case study, which is a report that highlights the unique cases of human or animal patient that presents an unexpected diagnosis, treatment outcome, or clinical cause using an established protocol or established procedure. The established procedure is expected to give is expected to give a particular outcome. But there are some situations or in some individuals or patients that the cases will be different, and such cases might be of huge impact to clinical cases or to science. So it's important that such kind of cases are reported, and they are reported using case studies article, and usually contain graphical images of cases illustrating what is being portrayed in the article. So this is an example of that. So, well, review article, yeah, it's also another important article. Is another important publication or write-up, especially for young researchers. So it's a way of the review articles are published to give a summary of a number of earlier reported data from a particular area of research interest. So it's a way instead of reading one article from one article to the other, trying to cover all the reported data in that area. Review articles try to bring all everything together and then give a summary, juggle all the data inside, bring them together and find out where there are common interests or where there are differences. And it's also a way of trying to identify current research gaps in that area. Because when all the data that have been published, all the experiment that have been carried out in that area has been brought together, it will give a clear indication of where is left to be done. And it's one of the ways that people explore to come up with research problem, to write proposal, maybe for a grant or for any purpose. So I have there some of the importance of literature review. So also an important one is, so I have this example as example of review article, and another one, this. Yeah, so the next one is original research article. So these are articles that are published to give a full description of an experiment and the outcomes of such experiments that are designed to solve specific problems, scientific research problem or question. So these are the most common types of published articles that we find online, and they convey new findings, extremely new findings in specific area of interest. So I have this example from New England Journal of Medicine, and then this from AIDS, right? So getting published. So getting published means getting to be known. And getting to be known means you're getting to becoming an expert in a particular area or in a particular scientific interest. And that requires the need to have or expand background knowledge in that area of interest. So it is very important for someone who is interested in getting published in that area to first identify the area of interest that is going to be focusing on, and then expand the knowledge, background knowledge in that. And one of the ways of doing that is to stay in the scientific knowing by devouring scientific articles, literature review, attending conferences, just being the scientific knowing, workshop, social media handle, and all sorts of possible ways of being in the scientific knowing. And also getting attached to scientific activities. So this does not. This is not only talking about being in the lab or getting working, having a lab that you are attached to. It can also be getting attached to some organizations in which part of their interest includes publishing some data from some of the observations from the community, or this can also mean that students that are going to be having some projects, and this is where young scientists, especially those that are even in their undergraduate levels and even postgraduate levels, getting attached to such institution is going to be putting one in the advantage of getting into scientific activities, and that would mean that having someone at least that would be a mentor, supervisor. So doing this is going to create opportunities to identify a number of scientific questions which will lead to writing, which will lead to writing a manuscript for publication. So having a good scientific question means that solving a particular problem. And after identifying a good scientific questions, what normally come after that is the interest in trying to solve the problem. And trying to solve the problem means that there must be some specific outline that are going to be followed or taken to solving those problems that we have questions. And that will mean designing a study and implementation of such study to with a view to solving the problem that we've been able to identify. And taking that procedure or taking design and implementation of a study and following it through will mean that there will be some outcomes that will come from such activities. And such activity will require some analysis. The outcomes that are expected to come from those activities that we've laid out. So the outcomes will come out as results, and analysis of such results is going to be discussed, and the implication of those results is going to be included in the discussion and outcome. So we can see that having a good scientific question is going to generate this cycle that is very important to getting published, to getting something to write for publication. So writing a manuscript, I have these 2 points that are very important to writing a paper of manuscript. The first one is to put one's thought in order, and then the writing process itself. So in putting one's thought in order, some questions are meant to be asked and properly answered. The first one that I have here is, have I done something interesting or new? What are the specific problems that I've been able to solve? How has my study addressed the problems that I have been able to identify before? And what are the key findings? What are the results? What are the implications of the findings that my research has been able to provide? Are they going to be changing policies? Are they going to be abrogating some previously reported data? Are they going to be confirming some of the data that have been reported before? So these questions are meant to be asked and carefully answered before proceeding. So when these have been clarified, then comes the writing process itself. So in writing, the writing process requires a number of points, a number of processes, a number of things to put in mind, which I've put here. The first one is selecting an appropriate journal of manuscript structure and draft preparation and the rest. So I will just give some points regarding each of these points. So I'll be starting with selecting an appropriate journal. So it is important to identify an appropriate journal that would fit perfectly into what the research is all about, the research that we've been able to conduct and have results for. So identifying a number of these journals is very important. And of course, there is need to rank based on interest or based on the preference to the journals. So you can identify and rank journals using scope of coverage, whether they are peer review or not, or whether they are publication fees, whether they are applicable publication fees or not, whether the availability of waiver, the open access, and etc. Also, there is need to weigh the research outcomes against the nature of the journals. There are some journals that they have, even when the scope of coverage covers what the present research has been able to identify. There are still some journals that they have specific interest in novel data. They have specific interest in publishing things that are extremely novel. So you weigh what your research outcomes are, you weigh them against what the nature of journals are. Can here it's as young researchers, one of the things that would most likely come to our mind is to publish in high-ranking journals, Q1 journals. But at the same time, we must also understand the fact that there are so many things that uh, limit us from carrying out some research that will really meet some of the journal's requirements. For instance, there is nothing bad in having the intention of publishing in Nature or Science or New England Journal of Medicine and all those high-ranking journals. But at the same time, you must also note that getting published and getting known is better than getting into those high-ranking journals. But of course, if you think the nature of the data that we have is sufficient enough to meet the requirements of those journal criteria, well, there's no problem. You can go ahead with that. So, so again, is that after being able to identify the number of journals to publish in, and then uh, reconcile the natures of the outcome of the research and the nature of the journal, it's important to determine which of all of them is going to be given the high rank. And then after that is to require for the journal publications requirements, writing requirement, the structures, and everything that has to do with preparing a manuscript. So it is this that would give an idea of how to structure or how to begin the whole manuscript. And to get the journal requirement means that visiting the journal page or journal website, which I have one here, you find something that will be pointing to authors where they will get information regarding the structure of the manuscript that they accept. So I have here from Nature, we'll have something like Publish With Us or for authors in all of those journals. Here we have Frontiers generally have this drop down menu option that gives information regarding everything that the authors need to know for publication. So this is from Therapeutic Drug Monitoring. We have for authors also here, and then this is Journal of Chromatography here. So having identified the specific journals and also getting the structure that they want. The manuscript structure, there is a general manuscript structure, especially for original research article, that is called IMRAC. So it's a way of structuring the sections that are meant to be in manuscript. So this is, like I mentioned, this is specifically for original research papers. For review articles and some other types of articles, there are different structures depending on journals. So getting the information regarding them can be obtained from those journals. So here we have first one, which is the title, author, abstract, and keywords. So the title and the abstract, they are the first pointer to what is contained in the whole article. So it is very important to ensure that the title and abstract, they represent what is in the whole article. Of course, the title must be descriptive enough, usually short and simple, and clear. Usually short and simple and clear. And the same thing with abstract. And there are two types of abstract structure. It could be structured or unstructured. Structured is the type in which there will be separate sections for introduction, methodology, results, and conclusion. And there are some that are not structured, that is the unstructured type. They just are a continuous writing of what is contained in the whole article. So this followed by introduction. Introduction is going to be giving the background knowledge about what the research is all about, and then linking the previous data with what you are about to do. That is trying to create a general background, and then identify where the problem is, and then trying to state the research problem. So also the method is an outline of how the questions that you've been able to raise in the introduction is going to be answered, or is going to be evaluated or examined, and the results would give the outcome of the methods that you have in the method section, and the discussion of the results and conclusion from that would follow suit. So the introduction is the why. So the method is how will you carry out activities to answer the questions that you've raised in the introduction, and what are the outcomes that you have, and then so what, that is how you're able to interpret what you have in the results is what is contained in this section. So then the references are the past studies. So in writing the manuscript, in writing this, it is very important to have a structure on how to write, but what is mostly uh, preferred or advised is to start writing with the methods, because that is the part that you are very sure of. Because that is even the part that you probably start with. Uh, uh, yeah, probably start with respect to that research. And then so it's important to start with that, followed by giving the results from giving the result that you have from the methods that you carried out. So what followed that, it's there's some people that say that writing introduction follows results. Some people will prefer to write discussion after results, but whichever way is accepted, or is not too inappropriate, depending on how you feel you can flow with the writing. And all along, of course, there has to be proper references of what are being what is being discussed. And the last thing that normally comes is the title, and of course the abstract, because it is going to be giving a summary of the whole content of the manuscript. So it's better, because it's not inappropriate if what comes last is the abstract, because it's going to be giving the summary of the whole thing, right? So in writing manuscript or preparing a draft, so there's some points that should be borne in mind, which are important for the acceptance of our manuscript. So the first one is to stick to the point. Sticking to the point means you are just straightforward, getting the points as straight as possible, and without beating about the bush or trying to explain some unnecessary facts. Just go straight to the point. And then again, there is no need to be afraid to explain, because this is what you do. And before you do that, you, of course, like I mentioned, must have background knowledge. So it means it's something that you already have enough knowledge about. So there's nothing bad in explaining properly. So there is no need to be afraid to explain. And again, that there is need to ensure clarity in the manuscript, trying to ensure that everything that you're trying to write is clear to everybody, because the manuscript is going to be if eventually published, will be getting to the whole world, and I'm sure understanding of writing varies across individuals. So it must be clear. The writing must be in such a way that a large a large proportion, a large generality of people would understand what is being passed across. So and then there must be an appropriate link between the previous work uh, and the present work. Uh, like like someone always says, there is nothing novel. There is nothing novel if it's things that are novel have some sort of reliance on past data, even if what you are getting is novel, there is the machines that you use in getting them is an outcome of a previously reported data. So there is really nothing novel. So there must be a proper link between the present work and the previous work. And then the references must be made relevant. They must be relevant to the study and also recent. There is this saying that the best the best references that you can use in manuscript should be within the past 5 years, so that it can so that your work can be considered to be as recent. It will look somehow if a large part of your references are in the 1990s or 1980s, and you keep referencing large previous years, previous before 2000. So usually we keep references within 5 years. It's better to keep references between 5 years, except if it is not possible. Except if it is not possible. So the best advice is to make the references as recent as possible. And again, is that originality is very important. There is need to ensure that the the manuscript that is being prepared is totally new, is totally original. Most of us are used to copy and pasting. In writing manuscripts, everything must be typed. There must not be copy and paste. I mean, typing means entered. Even if you are trying to pass the information in the previously reported data, it is the information that should be passed, not the wordings. It is the information, even if you are going to be referencing them. So it is always good to have this in mind while preparing a manuscript. And the last of it is that there is need to rewrite, rewrite, and rewrite, editing, and do a lot of rewriting, because this man says that there is no such thing as good writing, but only good rewriting. Robert Groves. So another thing that is important in preparing manuscripts is to get used to some writing tools. Get used to some writing tools. So there is need to learn and relearn a number of tools that are resourceful to writing. So many of us will think we know Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office apps, but by the time you get someone else, but by the time you're exposed to a number of things also on that same Microsoft Office, you realize that there are loads of information, loads of features or options that are still yet to be learned. So there is need to learn and relearn Microsoft Office apps, especially Microsoft Office Word or Microsoft Excel. That. And then again, to have grammatical checking and referencing tools, like proofing option in MS Word, activating it, the use of Grammarly, Quillbot, etc. And additionally, one referencing tools is another tool that is very important in writing, because they make references. Like I said, references are a key part of manuscript preparation. So getting acquainted to some referencing tools are important, like Mendeley, EndNote, Zotero, Biblioscape, RefWorks, Stiva, and etc. So this is very important, because they keep your references for you. In addition to the fact that you are not going to be entering them, we all understand how stressful entering references can be. But at the same time, it is clear that when there is need to change a referencing format, that is going to be more stressful using and entry manually. So it is always good. It's always good to have some referencing tools that will help in this regard, and then to have access to plagiarism checker. A number of institutions in Nigeria have subscriptions to Turnitin, and some other plagiarism checkers. So it might not be something that we all have access to, but at least to have someone who can make a quick check on the plagiarism nature of the work, the originality index of the manuscript. So then again, after preparing the manuscripts and it's due for submission, so there is need for a final revision. So one of it is that there must be a mechanism that archives or backs up the manuscripts and source documents. That the source documents are the original document that contain the data, that contain original data in which the study relies on or is built on. So you can imagine if you lose source documents and you're unable to provide them when they are requested for. So it will look somehow. And there are some situations whereby getting back those source documents, maybe from experimental procedures, can be impossible. For instance, maybe you carry out a study um, for a number of years. Maybe you carry out like one common one, and in my own area of research is carrying out stability study. You carry out stability study, something that you try to do for 6 months, 12 months, and at the end of the day, the data are lost. So it will be very impossible to go back to the lab and quickly get those data. So it is very, very important to have a backup of data, not just on our laptops, because anything can happen to it, or also or maybe flash drive. So it's always good to have a backup, maybe using Google Drive or any other online backup that we have access to. Additionally, is that there must be an appropriate way of naming different versions of a manuscript and all the documents that are related to the manuscript preparation, so as not to carry previous data or previous information that have been edited into what we are writing. So it is always good to have this. I just felt I should keep this in. So you can. It's always good to name with versions and also with time. If there are some situations whereby different versions are prepared within the day, so you can differentiate them using time, which will be easily identified. So again, is that before manuscript is submitted, there is need to check with other authors to confirm whether they've completed the addition or subtraction from the manuscript. So having done this, having checking the correctness for every part of the manuscript, it is important to also read and carefully follow submission instruction. Usually this is done by corresponding authors and maybe uh, a supervisors or a mentor, but it is also important for us to also have an idea of what this is all about. So it's always good to read and carefully follow instructions on submission process. Sometimes the instructions given can be so large. They will look like terms and conditions of electronics, and it's majority of us probably don't read those things like. But when it comes to something like this, it is very, very important that we read every word and understand them. So so I have on this slide the causes of manuscript rejection even before review. So the first one is when the content of the study is not within the scope of the journal. This is going to get an outright rejection because the journal represents a specific area of interest, and submitting something that is out of their scope is going to be a capital null for them. Then again, a non-conformity with journal style, and this is the main reason why it is very important to identify the journal, identify the journal of interest that you're going to be publishing in, and format the writing process with the style, format, and following their guidelines. So if this is not done, they are going to reject it or send it back to the authors for proper formatting. When there is lack of clarity or cohesiveness in the manuscripts, so this is also This can also lead to rejection, or where there is plagiarism, either duplication of existing work or plagiarism, either like it can be self plagiarism or uh, plagiarizing other people's work. I've come across a number of papers from different people trying to carrying out a particular research process. So what they do is doing the same thing for different drugs, and it's not even different drugs, different formulations. You can imagine someone trying to uh, uh, publish a journal on paracetamol tablets, something on paracetamol tablet, maybe an analysis on paracetamol tablets, and you are doing the same thing on paracetamol syrup. You can see it's the same thing, but you're trying to increase your number of publications by doing the same thing to different, to doing the same thing to different, maybe to different formulations or to different types of material. So it's always good to ensure that you are not plagiarizing yourself or you are not plagiarizing others. And then another one is poor quality of research. If the quality of the research is poor, this can lead to rejection of the manuscript even before review. And this last point is one of the reasons why some journals also reject papers when the results are not novel or they are not significant enough for them to consider it for publication. So this to avoid all this, it is always important to check with the journal that you have in mind, and that is why the previous point that I've highlighted are important. So the review process, when you submit manuscript for publication, sometimes it can take months, it can take weeks, depending on the journal. It's because of the review process that manuscripts undergo, which varies across journal. So the first thing that's usually done after submission is uh, the checking for editorial compliance to see whether all the structure and format of the journal have been followed strictly before the papers are before the manuscripts are sent out for reviewers. If it's a peer-reviewed journal, for non-peer-reviewed journal, there are some journals or there's some journals that issue some publications that are not peer-reviewed. They will state it and instruct the authors to carefully read the manuscript that they are going to be submitting, because they are not going to be liable for any error in the publication. So, but for peer-reviewed journals, these are done to ensure that the final product from such manuscript is going to be of good quality, high quality, that will meet the journal standard. So, so a number of reviewers are usually assigned to manuscripts. So it varies between 2 and 4. It can be more than 2, it can be 4, it could be 6, and sometimes they give the authors the opportunity of selecting appropriate reviewers for their manuscripts. But in a number of times, in addition to those that are selected, some other reviewers can be added to them, and sometimes they might not even consider some of the reviewers that have been selected by the authors. So, this is important because there must be the manuscripts is being submitted by the authors. They are just it's just their paper. They are the only ones probably that have gone through carried out the research and then gone through the manuscript. So it's important to have an independent individual who would have zero conflict of interest in the whole thing, that we should go through it and evaluate it for the correctness, the qualities, and the scientific quality of the manuscript. So reviewers usually read and then point out some things in the manuscript which are sent back to the editors, and then the editors forward the comments to the authors for appropriate response. So usually authors are meant to respond to this comments using a point by point response format, which I have an example here, which this is a point by point response, which I've tried to mask some information there. So the comments made by the reviewers are going to be highlighted uh, and then attended to one after the other. And then after the first reviewers, go to the next reviewer. And then when all of them have been attended to, you then forward it back to the editors. Some of the comments can require going back to the lab or going back to the feed or getting some data to buttress some of the earlier reported data in the manuscript. So in majority of cases, it is always good to agree or to say to agree with the reviewers, as long as they are not against scientific facts or judgment. So in case there are disagreements, a concise and polite explanation is always advised. It's always advised so that there won't be because some reviewers can be too harsh. They can be so harsh that they will be recommending to the journal not to accept those manuscripts. And in a number of cases, the comments or the advice of reviewers are usually followed by journals. So when this review process can take place, can take, like I said, weeks, months, when manuscripts are going to be passing back and forth, the authors, editors, reviewers, until the whole thing is evaluated for correctness. So there's the post-review decision. So when a review process has been completed, there is going to be a decision that will pass across from the editors to the authors. So it's either the manuscript is rejected or the manuscript is accepted. So when you are given the green light, it means it's accepted, and sometimes it might require some editorial revision or the author's revision before it's finally published. But in case of manuscript rejection, uh, some journals can accept resubmission after the authors have revisited the manuscript, um, eh, uh, attending to some of the reasons why the manuscripts have been rejected. So some journals can accept resubmission, and then the whole process will start all over again. But there are some journals, and in fact, some journals would, after rejection, they would suggest some of the journals, some other journals that can be explored. But of course, like I said, because what you had in mind at the onset is not just a single journal. So that's why I said identifying a number of journals and then rank them in order of preference. So that if one rejects, then you can go to the other. But of course, some of these journals can suggest some other journal that you can submit to. But there's some journals, like I know, like antimicrobial chemotherapy journal AAC. Once they reject a paper, no matter what you do for that same experimental procedure, they will never accept it again. You just have to look for another journal to publish to. So that comes with that also buttresses the need to evaluate and understand the requirements and everything regarding a journal before going for them. So submitting to another journal would mean going through the whole review process again. So take home point. So scientific writing is an important component of science. So it's a way in which scientific activities are communicated, and then it's a way to getting known in an area of scientific interest. So if it is not published, it was never done, meaning that in everything that we do, right from the onset, in our activities, we must have it in mind that this thing that we're going to be doing, we're going to be making it available for the general population. That is, we have it in mind that we're going to be publishing it. So that will give us that will give us the motive to ensure that whatever we are doing them correctly, and we are doing them with a view to making it a general, making it known to everybody. So it won't be something that you just do hurriedly or just do it shabbily, because you know you are going to be sharing this thing with some people later on. So it will give the conviction to do things properly, the way they should be done. And then again is to publish decently. We all know this maxim in academia that about publish. It's either you publish or you perish. So this pushes a number of people to just publish anything anyhow, so as to increase the number of publications in their names and the likes. And then again is that rejection is part of the process. It's always good to have that preparation. Of course, you try to perfect everything that you have in your manuscript that you intend to submit, the scientific process, the experiments carried out. You try to do them very perfectly. But of course, there's some situations whereby the manuscript will not meet the requirements or the interest of the journal or maybe the reviewers. So rejection is part of the process, and we should all prepare for that. And the last point here is to expand your collaborations. So it's always good to have large collaborations, have a number of people around that you have uh, collaborations with, you uh, discuss a number of things with, and come up with more interesting ideas. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abdulafeez. Like, thank you so much for educating us about how to get published. This was an amazing session. Thank you so much. So we'll quickly get to our Q&A session now. So please, if you have a question, now is the right time to just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Abdulafeez any question you have.
Hello, am I lost?
You're not
Oh,
lost.
okay. I
I
thought.
think we're just it's just a lot of good feedback on how nice your session was.
Okay.
Just from the chat box, a lot of people are just saying thank you so much for the presentation. Like I felt like you really took your time to break it down for us to understand. And I hope you're going to do that really. We hope you're going to do that really.
Sorry, I think we lost you. I didn't get the last part of what you said now.
I said I hope you're going to
Okay.
slides with us.
Okay, you mean sharing the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, that would definitely. No, that's the practice.
Have an amazing. Well said. I think that's what's happening to a lot of people right now. So please, do we have any questions for him? Any questions at all?
Hello, good evening.
Good
I have a
evening,
question.
Ibrahim. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Abdulafeez, for that presentation. My question is, sometimes we also submit research work to conferences. We want to present abstracts at
Yeah, that's
conferences. How do we balance, you know, uh, uh, how do we get our research published after we have presented this abstract in a particular conference? Or research that have been presented in a conference cannot be published elsewhere again. How do we navigate that waters? Or this just enlighten us about that. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Ibrahim. Yeah, yeah, I mentioned earlier about conferences where ideas or scientific outcomes are shared at conferences using abstracts. Yes, there are some conferences where you present abstracts, and uh, such presentation does not prevent you from eventually publishing it. It will be part of the specifications that would have been clearly stated out. But there are some, but there are some conferences that would accept presenting an abstract that has earlier been presented in another abstract. So the requirement and the guidelines varies, but the general view is that a published abstract or an abstract that has been presented in a conference can still be published as part of original article. Did I answer that? Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Uh,
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Ibrahim, do you have any other question?
Okay. Do any kind of organizations that organize conferences, they no take time to publish how can I put it, a summary of the abstracts that have been presented in at their conferences, such that some of them can still be referred back to. Because I know there are some presentations, there are some journals, some conferences whereby some people I know uh, present their abstracts at those conferences, and eventually they just left it that way because they thought, yes, the finding has been reported here, so there's no need to go on doing that. But some conferences don't actually publish any issue detailing all the abstracts that have been presented with them. So I just want to know, are authors or early career researchers, are we encouraged to still to push for a publication of an issue from conference conveners, or we should always see means to publish our our manuscript after we have presented it somewhere else?
okay. Yeah, I think I get your point now. Now, it depends on where the first thing to note is to the nature of the nature of the research activity that has produced the data that you intend to present. There are some, like you mentioned, there are some journals that would compile all the abstracts presented in a conference and publish them. But that doesn't preclude the fact that you can still go ahead and publish uh, the abstract as part of a full publication later on. So there are the if everything depends on the data. Like abstract is like a summary of a full blown uh, research activity. So if you think that what you have carried out as a research activity is not so extensive, is not so extensive enough for it to be published as a full manuscript. There is nothing bad in exploring um, this opportunity of presenting abstract at conferences, especially those that will compile and publish them later. It will be recorded as a publication to the individual. But again, either that or you just give a summary, just give a snippet of some of the data that you have in such abstracts, publish it there, and then publish a full-blown data in the manuscript. If you think what you have or the nature of the experiment is in such a way that you will have extensive data that would qualify it to be a full-blown manuscript. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ibrahim, did he answer that question?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm satisfied now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Um, Abdulafeez, there's a question for you in the chat box.
Okay.
Chinaza is asking that, do you know of any plagiarism checkers that we can use if we don't have institutional access?
Well, there are some online, but uh, I don't have any right now in my mind that that we can maybe we can subscribe or download an app or something. Like majority of those that I know just an online page that you can just copy and paste your document there, and they would evaluate it for plagiarism check. But I think they can serve as a starting point. They can serve as a starting point. But the majority of those that I know are institutionally subscribed uh, accounts. So I don't have any on my mind that we can, as individuals, can subscribe to. I don't know whether anyone has.
Okay, thank you, Abdulafeez. So just throwing that open to the floor now. If anybody, okay, Dolapo said we can check dupli
Okay,
checker.
duplicate checker.
Dupli checker. So Chinaza, I think you can also try that out, and it's something anybody can note. Okay, Wealth is asking that will the journal ask
Checker.
plagiarism checker that you used?
No,
That's quite a
they will
twist
not.
twister.
They will not even ask about plagiarism uh, checker, or they will not ask about originality index of your manuscript. They expect it's an expected feature of a manuscript that it has to be original. So it is just on you to look for ways to ensure that it is original, either by the only way that probably you can check, even if you are very sure that you entered, you wrote that manuscript yourself, the only way that you can check is to use a plagiarism check, because I think they will subject the manuscript to plagiarism check in their own evaluation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do we have any other question? Any other questions?
Yeah, I think someone is asking, going through the chat box now. Someone
Uh,
is asking
I
about the number of. So, when writing a review, how far back in years should you go?
okay. You answered that already.
Okay, yeah,
You said
okay,
about 5 years.
okay,
Yeah, so she got that answer already.
all right.
Thank you so much. I think okay. I don't think we have any other questions. Please, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask whatever it is you want to ask. Okay. Okay. It seems was some. I felt somebody was about to talk now. Um, Damlola.
Repeat one.
Okay. Okay. Damlola, if you have a question, please drop it in the chat box. It seems there are a lot of voices where you are. I don't think we'll be able to hear you properly. So if you have a question, please just drop it in the chat box. Okay. So Chinaza, I think you're clear now. Do we have any other questions? All right. Okay. Abdulafeez, once again, I just wanted to say thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time to really explain to us. Chinaza, you're welcome. Thank you for taking time with the slides and everything. Like, you really took us through the steps and you really, really helped us a lot. I'm pretty sure everybody learned one thing or the other.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth.
So it seems we don't have any other questions because nobody's unmuting their mic and I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. So I think with that, we can call it a day. Thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Uh,
Okay.
for having me.
You're practically part of the family. That's I don't think that's appropriate, but yes, you're welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
just before we go, thank you, Abdulafeez. Just before we go, I need to announce that very soon applications will be it will be open again for new members to join Science Cafe. So if we know anyone that is interested in joining the community, we can start telling them from now because in a couple of weeks it's going to be open for them to apply and join. So I think that's the only announcement we have before we go. So please enjoy the rest of your weekend, even as maybe on Monday you plan to put some of these things into action. So okay, Adepiton Damlola actually wants to know if he can send you a DM on LinkedIn, Abdulafeez.
Yeah, it's fine. No problem.
Okay, I'm pretty sure once again. If you still have any questions, you can drop it on the group chat on WhatsApp. So good night. Please enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.